Have you ever wondered how an ordinary person can become the spark for something extraordinary? This story begins not with grandeur, but with silence, with a woman whose quiet strength would soon shake the ground beneath a city. Deep in the old heart of Enugu, a place of dusty roads, noisy vendors, and laughter that drifted through the evening air, lived Amora, a woman whose life up until now had been filled with the kind of normalcy that so often disguises inner brilliance. There's an unspoken poetry in her existence, in the gentle rhythm of her days at Divine Mercy Pharmacy, a neat corner shop that became more than a lifeline for medicine. It was a haven for conversations, kindness, and the warmth that only Amora could bring. Though she was not cloaked in riches, she wore her dignity as if it was spun from gold. Sturdy, with a presence that made people slow down without knowing why, Amora carried herself with a mixture of grace and humility. Her skin, a rich brown that caught the light, was often lit with a smile that told stories, comforted children, and softened the edges of her neighbors' hard days. She was 27, but felt older, shaped by lessons handed down from parents who balanced strictness with relentless affection. Lessons bloom. They had shaped her beliefs that loyalty mattered more than fleeting pleasure, that true love was worth waiting for, and that one should never gamble with another's heart. For years, Amora had prayed quietly, longing for a love story untouched by shadows. She waited patiently, never taking shortcuts, never letting loneliness push her into the arms of the wrong man. That's why, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, when a sleek black Benz rolled to a gentle stop outside her pharmacy, the moment carried the weight of fate. The streets glistened with rain, headlights reflected in puddles, and the city's noise faded under the whisper of approaching destiny. Out stepped a tall, well-groomed man in a navy blue traditional captain, Chike, whose eyes found Amora instantly, as if gravity itself had arranged the meeting. He approached with confident elegance, holding an umbrella like a prince from a story Amora was only beginning to believe in. Their exchange was simple yet electric. "Good evening," he greeted, his voice deep, a velvet ribbon in the rain-soaked night. "Are you Amora?" She blinked, both flattered and cautious. "Yes." "Do we know each other?" His laughter was easy, familiar. "Not yet," he said, "but I've heard stories about the kind lady at Divine Mercy, the one who gives medicine to children, even when they can't afford it." Amora smiled, her cheeks warming with shy pride. "Only when they truly need it." Chike's eyes softened. "That's why I came. I wanted to meet the woman with the softest heart in town." The rain became backdrop applause as two strangers became something more than strangers. That night, Amora locked the pharmacy not only for security, but to preserve the magic still hovering in the air. Destiny, she thought, sometimes arrives when the world is wet and quiet, wrapped not in thunder, but in gentle possibility. Chike soon became the tapestry Amora dreamt of weaving her future into. He moved into her life like a song, never rushing, never demanding, just filling every quiet space with affection and surprise. Daily texts arrived like clockwork. Good morning with sunrise. Good night when moonlight spilled over her windows. He didn't just woo, he cared. Lunches unexpectedly delivered when she skipped meals. Invitations to restaurants whose grandeur made her question if she was still living the same life. Art shows. Hand-in-hand ventures through markets. Little moments that felt too perfect to be real. Within 2 months, he was seated in her family's living room. Her father responded with a hearty laugh. Her mother, with that searching gaze, pronounced, "He has the soul of a husband." For Amora, every day felt more enchanted than the last. Yet, behind the shimmer, a chill wind occasionally crept through. Cheek wore designer clothes. He drove 2 lavish cars. He spent money like it was air. But his life story remained a locked box. Real estate, he'd say casually. I flip properties. The words were smooth, the delivery perfect. But as Amora watched the bills for their extravagant dinners mount up, bills large enough to feed whole neighborhoods, questions grew. How many properties can one man flip in a few months? She wondered, her heart quietly seeking answers. On a rooftop lounge overlooking the city, with laughter drifting away like smoke, she pressed him again. Chike, what do you really do? Not the headline, the details. His answer came soft, deflecting. You're enjoying the results, aren't you? And while she smiled for the moment, inside, a seed of caution took root. Love, she told herself, must be built on truth. But Chike had woven a cocoon of comfort, safety, and romance. A cocoon so intricate that it kept her both wrapped in warmth and separated from the answers she sought. The doubts, however, never overshadowed the happiness. When Chike proposed on her birthday, in front of all those she cared for, Amora felt her heart split open with joy. The fireworks that lit the sky that night seemed to promise a new forever, and Amora whispered tearfully into Chike's shoulder, I never thought I'd find someone like you. He kissed her forehead, murmuring, and I'll never give you a reason to regret it. Those words became the melody in her soul, as wedding preparations, lessons bloom. Began extravagant, dazzling, breathtaking. Chike took charge, insisting, You just enjoy, Amora. Your family won't spend a naira. He brought in a wedding planner from distant Bua, whose language overflowed with terms Amora barely understood. Theme boards, stage drapery, imported cake. Each choice was grander than the last. Chandelier lights, champagne fountains, golden chairs. Yet each luxury made Amora's doubts echo louder, questioning if love was being drowned in spectacle. Night after night, the feverish pace of wedding preparations swept Amora deeper into a current she could no longer control. There were moments of delight, trying on gowns that shimmered with promise, tasting cakes that melted on the tongue, watching guests list names multiply until she hardly recognized half of them. But in the quiet spaces, when the laughter faded and the halls emptied, her mind replayed every unanswered question about Chike's life. Her best friend, Adise, saw the cracks beginning to show. She found Amora late one evening, frowning deeply. "Babe," Adise began, "I'm not saying you shouldn't enjoy this, but doesn't something feel off? Who is this wedding really for? Us or Instagram?" Amora gave a tired, honest reply. "I've asked Chike about it. He says he just wants me to be happy." "And are you?" Adise pressed, searching her eyes for truth. "I think I am," Amora answered, pausing before adding, "I just wish I understood him more." Adise hugged her fiercely. "Trust your gut, Amora. Don't let the glitter blind you." Those words clung to Amora for days, their meaning growing weightier with each passing hour. Then, 2 days before the wedding, a storm arrived, not with rain, but revelation. Chike called to say he'd be spending the night at Crystal River Hotel, finalizing vendor payments, clearing his mind before the big day. Amora, ever thoughtful, decided to surprise him with a gift, a box of gold-plated cufflinks, delicate hearts engraved with C and A, bought with her own savings. She added a handwritten card, "Forever starts now. I love you." She arrived at the hotel, nerves tinged with happiness. The receptionist greeted her warmly. "You're here for Mr. Chike, room 407. Heart fluttering, Amora stepped into the elevator, imagining his joyful surprise. But fate had other plans. Near room 407, laughter echoed from 405. Chike's voice, mixed with a woman's, older and rich. Amora paused, curiosity pulling her closer. The door, slightly ajar, betrayed the secret inside. "You've done well, my love," the woman said. She's sweet and simple. No one suspects. Chike replied, "That's the whole point. I marry her, and we're finally free. Everyone sees me as clean. No more rumors." "You'd better make it work. You're my best investment," the woman purred. Amora staggered backward, every ounce of hope crashing down. She didn't need to see faces. The voices were enough. Mamar Bisi, the wealthy widow with a reputation for finding comfort in younger men. Amora's hands shook as unreal laughter filled the corridor, her heart breaking with devastating clarity. In that moment, Amora wasn't just a betrayed bride. She became a woman forged by pain, ready to reclaim her power. Amora left the hotel like a ghost in the night. No tears, no rage, only heavy silence. She held the gift box tightly, every step echoing with betrayal. By the time she reached her car, the ribbon on the gift swung loosely, mocking the love that had just unraveled. She leaned against the bonnet, breath wavering, chest tight. The urge to sob, to scream, to throw the precious gift into the road gnawed at her, but she resisted. Her pain metamorphosed into resolve. "You said you'd never give me a reason to regret saying yes," she whispered to herself, staring down at 2 golden hearts, meant for a man who had just revealed his own. Determined not to falter, Amora climbed into the driver's seat, turned off her interior lights, and waited silently. She became a shadow, watching, thinking, absorbing every detail. At p.m., Chike emerged, laughing, radiant in his crisp white kaftan. Mama Bisi followed, her gold wrapper shimmering under the hotel's lights. They looked like royalty, untouchable, united in their secret. Amora didn't move as Chike helped her into her car, kissed her hand, whispered words that drew laughter from lips painted bright. The scene burned itself into Amora's memory, a cruel theater witnessed by only the woman who mattered most. When the cars drove away, Amora stayed, her heart shattered, mind whirring with plans she never thought she'd make. She remembered every moment of love she'd felt. Now, each was a shard of broken glass. What had been a promise became a lesson. That night, as pain sharpened into clarity, Amora chose not to run. Let him stand before family, before friends, she thought. Let them all see who he truly is, and let the world remember my truth. She would not cry alone in the shadows. Her story would have a different ending. The night air seemed to hum with her resolve. This was not defeat, but the beginning of a reckoning. With morning came a pale gray light, dust motes swirling in her bedroom as Amora brushed her hair. Her mother entered, a basket of eggs and bread in hand, concern hidden behind old wisdom. "You haven't eaten, child. Is something wrong?" "I'm just tired," Amora replied, keeping the cracks well hidden. Wedding tension, her mother insisted, kissing her forehead and blessing the future she still believed in. "You're lucky, Amora. Not everyone finds a man like Chike." Amora's smile was thin, a mask she wore for peace. But in the mirror, she saw not a bride, but a woman on a mission. That afternoon, she called Adis to a cafe near the bookshop. No more secrets, no more waiting. The meeting was solemn. Adis arrived with cold zobo, the weight of worry in her eyes. Amora spoke with steady calm, unwrapping the entire betrayal with precision. Adis's disbelief was raw. "Sorry, what?" "Mama Bisi and Chike." Amora explained it all, the overheard conversation, the truth about being the cover. "What did you do?" Adise stammered. "Nothing," Amora replied firmly. "I want the world to see. I want the city to watch as he stands proud, then falls." "You're truly not canceling the wedding?" Adise gasped. "No," Amora confirmed. "Let him celebrate. When the time is right, I'll give him a gift he won't forget." With resolve written in every word, Amora revealed her plan. Update the guest list. Make Mama Bisi a special guest in the spotlight. Prepare for a truth that would not stay hidden. The stage was set, not just for betrayal, but for transformation. Amora, once the quiet pharmacist, now stood at the crossroads of her own revolution. Subscribe and hit like. Our powerful stories add years to your life. Join our Story Lovers Club and let us know in the comments, where are you listening from? As dawn crept over Enugu, painting the horizon in soft apricots and gold, the city pulsed with excitement. Shopkeepers arranged fresh flowers, traffic bustled with wedding guests, and laughter caught the breeze, unaware of the storm about to break. In Amora's house, a reverent hush hovered over everything. Relatives bustled through corridors, tailoring vibrant gele and arranging gifts. Her mother drank in every tradition, smoothing Amora's dress with trembling hands. "You are the center of today," she whispered, her eyes shining with pride and unspoken prayers. But Amora, though draped in dazzling beadwork and layered silk, moved like a woman walking through the ruins of her own heart. Even her breath felt measured. The transformation overnight was astonishing. Pain alchemized into a measured tranquility. While her mother mistook her composure for bridal nerves, deep within, Amora rehearsed her plan. Her phone vibrated with well wishes and Chike's persistent doting messages. "Soon you will be my wife, my treasure. I can't wait for everyone to see you." Each message stung, but she replied as a dutiful fiancé should, her words now armor, not affection. Meanwhile, the wedding planner called every 15 minutes, ensuring gold-embroidered seating charts, fresh white lilies, even special beverages imported for the couple's private toast. Amora nodded, thanked everyone, and retreated whenever possible. The energy drained her. Her mind rehearsed not wedding vows, but the confrontation maneuvering ever closer on the horizon. In the stillness of her old childhood bedroom, posters of hope peeling from the walls, Amora called Adis for reassurance. "Are you sure?" Amora asked, voice fragile, only for her friend. "Absolutely," Adis assured her, her voice fierce. "The cameraman's in place, and the DJ knows when to cue the song. If you want out, say the word. But if you're doing this, do it with your head high. Let them see your worth. Let them see him bare." Amora smiled weakly. "I never thought my wedding day would be a battleground." "You didn't choose the war, Amora," Adis whispered, "but you get to choose how it ends." By midday, makeup artists and stylists turned Amora into a regal bride. Gold-bronzed eyelids, lips a shade deeper than wine, each eyelash curled with intention. But behind all the beauty, her heart pounded with mission. The vows she'd written now felt hollow. Her real promise was no longer to Chike, but to herself, to never again mistake silence for peace. The Holy Trinity Cathedral's age-old walls housed centuries of secrets, but none as potent as the one now unwittingly stepping toward its altar. Inside, sunlight danced on stained glass, showering the congregation in fuchsia and emerald. Every pew was crowded, family in traditional attire, friends from university, pharmacy colleagues, city dignitaries, and gliding through the main door in a river of purple silk and gold, Mama BC herself, her smile as polished as the jewelry at her throat. Cheek stood at the altar, the picture of composure, his tailored agbada a declaration of status. Every gesture rehearsed, every smile perfectly calculated, as he chatted amiably with the groomsmen. But in his eyes lived a trace of wariness, a flicker that only someone watching closely would notice. When the music shifted, and Amora, radiant and regal, appeared in the doorway, a hush fell over the church. Gasps echoed. This was a bride who seemed carved from marble, strength and poise in every step. As she took her place beside Chike, the pastor's deep voice attempted to usher in holiness. "Marriage," he intoned, "is the union of hearts born of honesty. Amora barely heard him. Her eyes flicked to the crowd, landing on Adise, and more pointedly, Mama Bisi seated in the front row, gloved hands resting on her clutch. The ceremony unfolded as tradition dictated. Prayers, readings, a choir so angelic some guests wept openly. But to Amora, the entire room throbbed with suspense. When the vows began, her hands did not tremble, and her eyes, clear as a river's surface, never wavered. Chike took her hand, vowing, "You are my peace, my joy, my future." Each word, Amora realized, was hollow, a performance meant for people who could only guess what thunder truly lived behind those calm exteriors. When it was Amora's turn, she paused, letting the silence stretch. Even the pastor looked at her, puzzled but patient. Then, with a voice that rang out pure and uncowed, she said, "Trust is the soul of love. Without truth, even gold turns to dust." Guests looked at one another, whispers beginning to churn. Only Adise smiled, sensing the growing ripple of something seismic approaching. The reception was a spectacle. Crystal chandeliers, tables draped in imported linen, every surface crowded with gifts and flowers. Waiters dashed with trays of pepper soup, jollof rice, moin moin. Laughter tumbled easily through the room. Every eye was on Amora and Chike, who drifted from table to table, their hands intertwined to maintain the illusion. But even in the bright lights and festive clamor, shadows pressed at the edges. Amora greeted guests with a radiant smile, but her gaze returned again and again to Mama Bisi, who watched the proceedings with an amused air, lips pursed in secret satisfaction. Chike remained his charming self, shoulders squared with pride as toasts were raised in his honor. To Chike, provider and prince. To Amora, most beautiful bride. Cheers erupted, but to Amora, each glass clinked with irony. Then, between the cutting of the cake and the opening of the dance floor, the moment arrived. Adise caught Amora's eye and nodded. The DJ, as planned, changed the song. A subtle but recognizable shift. Cameras were readied, attention sharpened. Amora rose, drawing a hush as she tapped her glass to address the gathering. "Family, friends, honored guests," she began, her voice calm but steely. "Thank you for sharing in what I believed would be the happiest day of my life. I want to offer a special thanks to everyone who has stood by me, lifting me up, trusting in my joy." She paused, sweeping her gaze across the crowd, feeling their expectations land heavily on her shoulders. "There is one more thing you all deserve to witness, because I have always believed in loving with open hands and living with honest hearts." The room sat riveted, every blessed blinking soul pinned to her words. Even Chike gripped her arm a little more tightly, trying to maintain composure. With the spotlights now trained upon her, Amora's heart hammered within her chest, not from fear, but from the certainty of justice. She continued, "Marriage isn't just a celebration of love. It is the burial ground for secrets, the cradle for truth. We cannot begin a life together if we're building it on lies. No matter how beautiful the ceremony or how sweet the words spoken today. A ripple of unease swept the hall. The laughter faded to nervous silence. Guests leaned in, caught between shock and intrigue. Chike's mask of composure slipped, his hand tightening around Amora's fingers. His eyes bore into hers, searching for mercy, finding instead a fierce resolve. In a single practiced motion, Amora produced the small box, the gold cufflinks she had so lovingly purchased, now symbols of her revelations. She held them aloft for the room to see. I wanted to surprise my groom, to bring him joy, as he's brought me many gifts. But I am not the only one here with a gift for Chike. Her voice quivered, not with frailty, but with the immense weight of what she would reveal. All eyes followed between her and Mama Bisi, who sat frozen, expression indiscernible beneath her elegant head wrap. I know my place in your story, Chike, Amora declared, her voice slicing through the room's breathless tension. And I know who truly occupies your heart and your partnership. I was never to be your wife, just your hiding place, proof for the world while shadows kept you company. The shock in the hall was palpable. Murmurs grew, first confusion, then recognition, as Amora's meaning sank in. Phones came out, discreetly at first, then brazenly, as the story unfolded in real time. She turned fully to Mama Bisi, addressing her directly with dignity. You too have your secrets, but today they cannot remain in the dark. Let the entire city see who you both really are. Let them remember, a woman's silence is not her consent. Someone gasped. Some wept. Some cheered, the tide of support shifting palpably as Amora stood tall, her grieving heart now the engine of her courage. Chaos erupted. At first, Chike tried to laugh off the confrontation. It's a misunderstanding. She's overwhelmed. Can't you see she's under stress? But the panic in his voice betrayed him. Mama Bisi's composed facade crumbled as scandalized whispers darted through the hall. Adise rushed to Amora's side, arm locked in solidarity, while relatives from both sides rose in confusion and then anger. Chike, what is this? His father thundered, his face mottled with betrayal. Mama Bisi, her regal poise abandoned, tried to usher Chike away, but the crowd closed in, cameras hungry for every moment. Amora, breathing unsteadily, summoned a calm she barely recognized as her own. Her mother reached for her, trembling. Why, Amora? Why here? With a gentle squeeze of her mother's hand, Amora answered for all to hear. Because truth is owed not just to me, but to every woman who has ever been used, every family who trusts blindly. Because dignity must be won, even at the cost of tradition or spectacle. For the rest of the day, the wedding was all anyone discussed, not the food or the decorations, but the courage of the bride who refused to become another casualty of deceit. Some applauded her bravery, some grieved for her pain, but none would ever forget the lesson learned, that silence, when broken, can become a weapon sharper than any betrayal. Long after the hall emptied, when the city lights shimmered tiredly over Enugu, Amora sat beneath her father's mango tree. Her gown was rumpled, Her eyes rimmed red, but her spirit hummed with hard-won dignity. ADEMOYE joined her, bringing hot tea, and together they sat, two women beneath the stars, knowing the world would spin differently for them tomorrow. No secret stays small in a close-knit town like Enugu. By the next morning, the events of Amora's wedding were the only story that mattered. Markets buzzed, streets echoed with hurried whispers, and social media burned with photos and shaky videos of the moment Amora took back her own narrative. Every vendor at Divine Mercy Pharmacy greeted the dawn differently. Older women sighed with knowing sympathy. Young lovers debated heatedly about trust, while elders over their morning pap shook their heads, in part at Chike's disgrace, but more in awe of Amora's strength. Lessons bloom in the warmth of their stories. Reporters started calling, seeking the first exclusive from Amora. Some came hoping for tears and regret, a wounded woman's sob story. But Amora, her voice now steady as mountain granite, offered only measured words. "It isn't about shaming anyone," she told a radio interviewer on Sunrise 92.6 FM. "It's about refusing to wear a false story just to make others comfortable. It's about loving yourself fiercely, even when it breaks the rules set by people who don't know your heart." Businesses around town buzzed with the aftermath. Divine Mercy saw more customers than it ever had on a Monday, some just stopping in to shake Amora's hand for what she'd done, others to offer flowers, prayers, or advice. "We are proud of you, my daughter," murmured Mrs. Obinna, pressing a lacy handkerchief into Amora's palm. Fathers brought their daughters, glancing at Amora as if she was both caution and inspiration. Small boys stared at her as though she were a queen, newly crowned by the city's approval. Still, beneath the flood of support, there was also backlash. Some elders grumbled about public shame, about upending tradition. Women with quiet pain in their eyes thanked Amora in whispers, while others warned her to tread carefully. But Amora accepted it all. Cheers, criticism, caution. She saw her experience as a ripple across the city's waters, knowing that sometimes a sudden disturbance was what was needed to keep the river flowing clean. At the heart of all the noise, loneliness silently gnawed at Amora. She tried to work each day as though nothing had changed, lining medicine bottles, counseling worried mothers. But that golden wedding ring, now hidden in a box deep in her drawer, felt like a phantom pain on her finger. Sleep was thin and restless. Dreams flickered, with glimpses of old hope turning to dust. There were mornings she woke and couldn't move for hours, sadness pressing on her like a dense, unyielding blanket. ADEMOYE, steadfast as ever, remained her lifeline through the disarray. They met almost every evening on rusty metal chairs in the small backyard, sipping cold zobo as mosquitoes whined and dusk deepened. ADEMOYE never pushed Amora to get over it, never spouted hollow encouragements. Instead, she let Amora talk, or sit silent, or even sob until her throat was raw. "You didn't just stand up for yourself," ADEMOYE told her one night. "You stood up for every woman who's ever doubted her own worth." Amora managed a weak smile. It doesn't feel heroic. It just feels empty. Like I've lost something I'll never get back. Adis reached across the table, took her hand. What you lost was never yours. Not really. What you have, no one can take now. With friends like Adise, even the most shattered heart can begin to remember how to beat. With each passing day, Amora's world edged back from grayscale to color. Not because the pain left, but because she learned to carry it, and eventually to transform it. The days after the wedding rolled on, each bringing deeper clarity. Amora learned just how much her act had unsettled, inspired, and frightened her city. Some women visited the pharmacy in secret, sharing their own stories of heartbreak and betrayal. Young men, newly conscious of their integrity, stopped to talk more honestly about their relationships, their fears of being like Chike. The story spread, reaching even the sleepy outskirts of Enugu. At first, it was told as a scandal, a disaster, some said. But gradually, the narrative shifted. Amora's refusal became an act of self-respect and courage. Students at the local university debated fiercely the rights of women to say no at any point. Preachers at Sunday services warned against secrets, called for marriages built on trust. Even children on the playgrounds started incorporating Amora's name into their games, sometimes as the heroine, sometimes cautioning against being a Chike. Amora herself focused on moving forward. Patience still needed her attention, and her elderly parents, who had first felt crushed by the public spectacle, now watched her hustle with pride and humility. Her father, usually terse and reserved, began calling her my lioness in private, while her mother, her voice choked but glad, said only, "You're stronger than I could ever have been." Life did not return to normal. Instead, it found a new, unexpected rhythm, one with more eyes watching, more hearts hoping, and more people daring to stand up for their own truths. Some wounds refuse to heal quietly. One sun-bright afternoon, as Amora was stocking vitamins behind the pharmacy counter, she looked up and found Chike standing there, as if conjured by unfinished business. He wore his pain, not in bravado this time, but in the slumped line of his shoulders, the deep fatigue etching his face. There was no crowd, no cameras, just the raw awkwardness of two people who had been nearly wed. "That was quite a day," Chike began, uncertain, tracing invisible patterns on the glass countertop. For a moment, both grappled with what to say. "Thank you. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Farewell." But Amora let the silence linger. It suited the magnitude of their rupture. "I never meant to hurt you," he said softly. "I thought, if I just convinced everyone, maybe I could convince myself. I was wrong. You deserved truth, not performance. And I will pay for what I did." I already am. Amora listened, not with resentment, but a calm detachment earned through fire. "We all carry our burdens, Chike. What matters is not hiding them in someone else's name." He nodded, a shadow of shame passing over him. "If you can forgive me, I hope you will. Someday. Amora looked at him. A man fallen from grace, but at last unmasked. Forgiveness isn't a gift for you. It's a pathway for me. In time, I'll walk it for myself. He left quietly, and Amora felt something heavy lift from her heart, a final letting go. Closure, she realized, didn't always come with grand gestures or perfect words. Sometimes, it came in the quiet clarity of truth, spoken without bitterness. Spring crept back into Enugu, and with it, quiet signs of Amora's renewal. Her pharmacy flourished, attracting not just customers, but stories, confidences, hopes. The pain that had hollowed her out slowly became space for new things, friendships annealed in the fire of honesty, compassion practiced daily, and the beginnings of dreams Amora had long set aside for marriage. She joined a local women's group, started mentoring young girls about self-worth and resilience. At first, she was reluctant to speak, to revisit the humiliation. But as she shared, she realized her story was no longer just a scar. It was a map. Mothers wept in gratitude, daughters listened, teachers asked her to speak to their students. In time, Amora began to glimpse the power in her honesty. She saw how her courage helped others step away from old destructive myths. Every so often, as the sun sank into the red haze above town, Amora would walk to the river, sit on the smooth rocks, and let the water's hush remind her that life was movement. Her heartbreak was not her ending, but her current, leading her eventually to places where love was no longer a deception, but the steady work of truth and grace. With time, the wounds of Amora's heart healed into something stronger, a sense of purpose that colored every part of her life. Her pharmacy, once just a modest stop for medication, became a true haven. Mothers confided in her about difficult marriages. Young couples asked her for advice, and old friends brought gifts, just to thank her for teaching the whole town what it means to be honest. Amora found herself part of a quiet revolution. She didn't seek the spotlight, yet her story had inspired change around her. Her work with women's groups grew. She built a free Saturday clinic at Divine Mercy, offering health services to those who couldn't afford them and inviting speakers, doctors, lawyers, counselors, to share wisdom. Over time, the lines for the clinic stretched longer, not just for medicine, but for solace. Women who'd suffered in silence now found their voices, sometimes in angry bursts, sometimes in gentle stories, shared over cups of tea. Amora learned that strength wasn't shown in battle alone. It lived in small acts of kindness, in everyday resilience. Special guests came and went, but one constant was Adizi, always at her side. Their friendship, tested and tempered by hardship, grew into a partnership of mutual understanding. Lessons bloom. They made shared plans, traveling to neighboring towns, starting workshops on self-care and independence, dreaming up new community projects. If old pain lingered, it became fuel for their shared ambition, not a shackle to the past. In one quiet moment, outside divine mercy, as evening painted the sky lavender and deep blue. ADEMOYE teased, "Now you're famous enough that even the governor wants you as a guest at Women's Day." Amora laughed, not with pride, but gratitude, for the chance to redefine her legacy. Through all of this, the possibility of new love was never forced. Amora kept her heart open but cautious, greeting eligible suitors with polite warmth and the boundaries she'd learned to cherish. She understood now that genuine love needed roots in truth, and if it ever came again, she would recognize its realness by the calm it brought, not the storms. The aftermath had battered relationships with her parents, but slowly, with careful conversation, everything began to mend. Her mother took longer, wrestling old fears about shattered traditions, but eventually embraced Amora's courage as a gift, not a shame. Her father, quiet at first, reflected in private letters he left on Amora's bedside table. One read, "A woman who stands for herself stands for her whole family." They began to envision new dreams together. It was her father who planted the idea of expanding Divine Mercy, a second branch on the city's north side, to serve families who had to travel for medicine. They worked together alongside neighbors, raising funds, negotiating rents, painting the walls by hand in bright, welcoming colors. By the first day, the second shop had more customers than anyone expected. Lessons bloom. Amora's mother learned to manage inventory, turning her concern for her daughter into a contribution to the next generation. Neighbors whispered, "This family has been through fire and come out gold." Even distant relatives in far-off villages sent notes and small gifts, palm oil, yams, colorful wraps. The wounds that once felt like endless holes now grew over with new habits of love, new bonds of respect. Sometimes, Amora spent quiet evenings talking to her father about everything she'd learned: the danger of making appearances into prisons, the cost of compromise, and the unexpected beauty of facing the world in daylight instead of hiding behind closed doors. There were tears, apologies, laughter, but above all, the recognition that their family history now included the story of a daughter who refused to be diminished. Life for Chike took a different, quieter turn. His reputation bore the stain of public exposure. At first, he tried to recover, using contacts and wealth to get back into circles that once welcomed him. But his social currency had faded. Real estate deals dried up. Some trusted his promises less. Mama BC moved quietly away, her own name spoken in hushed tones, her ambitions stunted by scandal. Months passed, and Chike reappeared sometimes at community functions, now changed, more reserved, less quick to charm. He began volunteering anonymously at shelters, helping children, learning the power of humility. His story did not end in disgrace, but in gradual reflection. He discovered that respect could only be earned where truth was spoken, and that relationships built on deception never provided real shelter. He sought Omora out only once more, some months after their wedding's collapse. This time, he brought no requests for forgiveness, no grand gestures. "I'm learning what it means to start over," he said quietly. "That lesson was your gift, even if it cost us both so much." Omora wished him well. There was no bitterness left, only the hope that for some, ruin could lead to growth, and that their shared story would serve as warning and wisdom alike. Enugu changed in subtle but lasting ways. Weddings became smaller, more focused on sincerity over spectacle. Families asked deeper questions. Couples learned the hard lesson that trust mattered more than tradition. Pastors incorporated Omora's story into sermons, urging women and men alike to build relationships on open truth and to honor themselves above social performance. The Divine Mercy Pharmacy became a source of community pride. Requests for Omora's advice arrived from schools, churches, even distant regions. She helped draft guides for young women, spoke at conferences about courage under fire, and joined councils advocating for women's rights and better protection in marriage. Her own life became a living message that loss needn't define you, that public pain could be turned into collective purpose, and that dignity was earned not by hiding your flaws, but by facing them and moving forward. She continued to support women whose stories mirrored her own, offering prayers, resources, and most importantly, the permission to hope for more. Older women began to reference Omora's strength when advising their daughters. Young men looked to her example to understand the price of recklessness. Her family learned to walk with their heads higher, their home now a place for solace and wisdom, not just medicine. Years later, as Omora stood at the edge of Enugu's bustling marketplace, she let herself reflect with pride, not just on the trials she faced, but on the world she'd helped shape. She saw children playing freely, women laughing with real joy, and men who offered their partners not just wealth, but honesty and care. The lessons of her wedding day had rippled outwards, making the city gentler, braver, more thoughtful. Omora never saw herself as a hero, but as a woman who found grace in truth. She discovered that while love could wound, it could also heal if grounded in honesty. The scars remained, but became gentle reminders, a map across her soul of each step she'd taken towards self-respect and a new kind of hope. On a calm evening, beneath the spreading mango tree with Adizi and her family close by, Omora gathered the women of the town for a celebration, not of an event, but of a way of living. They danced, sang, and shared stories of hardship and healing. As torches flickered and music rose, Omora spoke the words that had come to guide her life. To love bravely, to live truthfully, this is our inheritance. We are more than the stories men write for us. We are the authors of our own grace. As laughter echoed into the night, the legacy of one woman's courage stitched itself into the heart of Enugu. And with each dawn, the promise of honest love was renewed, a gift given not just to Amora, but to everyone willing to embrace their own flawed and shining truth.